Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at the brand new Kansept Havorn. This is a Jonathan Sibley design, Dijon knives, and I love the overall aesthetics of this knife. That's why I agreed to check it out. And I gotta say, this I think has become my favorite Kansept knife so far. And I'm going to tell you why in just a little bit. The name of this knife was named after the white-tailed eagle. It definitely has that eagle aesthetic there. Nice sleek lines. This is a full-size EDC knife coming in at 8.14 inches long with a 3.42 inch drop point blade of S35V in steel. Got a nice beautiful stonewash finish there. Very acute tip, great for piercing task. Nice grippy functional jimping right there. You know, I think it's right where it needs to be. And my biggest complaint on this knife is definitely the sharpening choil. I sharpened it up after I finished the testing, and as you can see, it's already started to flare out after the first sharpening. So if I don't want that to get worse, I'm gonna have to cut a bigger one in there. I just wish, God, I wish more companies would start getting with the program with that. Just so annoying, but it's not a deal breaker for me. I can do that rather easily with a Dremel or a diamond file. If you ever want me to do a full video on that, let me know that, because I've done a short on it. You got a nice top swedge that goes all the way out to that tip to thin it out. And I think besides its aesthetics, the saving grace for this knife after seeing the sharpening choil is the geometry to this blade. So you have a flat grind here, and even though you have fairly thick stock at 0.12 inches thick, they managed to get this down nice and thin to around 14 thousandths behind the edge. Not to mention, it has a 19 degrees per side edge bevel. So this thing should slice very, very well. We're going to find out. Yeah, this knife came nice and sharp out of box. Most of my Kansepts do. And before, I did not check the measurements on the geometry of the blade at all before I started this. So I wasn't really sure, but all I did know at this point is that this thing is slicing very, very well. And you know, when it's single wall cardboard, that could just be the fact that it has a really sharp edge. But of course, after I finished this, I checked everything, so I was aware that it has nice and thin edge geometry. And I can't stress enough how much better a knife performs with a lower edge angle. And you get more edge retention too, unless the steel just can't handle it. Well, now we're going to test the ergos. And that was another thing. Initially, I thought it felt really comfortable. And not only is it comfortable, especially for flat scales, I'm able to get a lot of force into the wood. The clip stayed out of the way of my palm, and it was nice and comfortable. So this portion of the sisal rope testing, I did this a while, like when I first got the knife, I was testing a bunch of knives. So I was like, let me do the sisal rope, the part I hate most, so I can get that out of the way. And then I didn't get back to this one for at least a week and a half. And I forgot I did this, but you know, my memory's already terrible, and then, you know, add a lot of time in there in between, and it's even worse. So I ended up doing this twice. So you got extra rope cutting for this particular video. But I'll tell you what, as far as cutting on a flat cutting surface, this blade shape is perfection, because the belly to the tip isn't crazy swoopy. It doesn't just shoot straight up. It's a very gradual belly. And then the way the handle kind of cants yourself down whenever you're doing, say, a pinch grip cut, or even in hand, like you're squeezing in a hammer grip, it kind of cants the blade down, and it just makes it very comfortable, very easy to do. And it definitely helps, being that it has a decent edge bevel on it, as far as I'm talking about thinness. It's a night and day difference whenever I test a knife like this. I think this one was, if I remember correctly, it was either 18 or 19 degrees per side. But it is such a huge difference whenever I go from a knife like this to what you're normally seeing from a lot of these production companies, a 24 to 26 degree edge bevel. That is so much harder to do these abrasive materials like this. They just feel like I'm trying to cut it with an axe. I mean, of course, it's being a little facetious, but you know, it's definitely a lot easier, especially on my hands. The blisters don't pop out as fast, and I don't mind doing them as much. But yeah, this one was comfortable. It was performing well, and because of the 2 sections of rope that I ended up cutting, because of me forgetting, I ended up cutting 200 cuts of the 1/2 inch of rope, and it was easy. You know, that's why I didn't think I'd already done this part of the test, because I write down everything. I have it all like in columns so I don't forget. Well, sometimes whenever I'm testing multiple knives, I tend to forget to pencil in that I did this portion of the test, and that's what happened here. But it really made me think I didn't do it because of how well it was still slicing by the second time I did it. You know, usually, depending on the steel and, you know, the geometry and all that good stuff and how the edge is, it's usually going to struggle if I try to do it again. So, not this one. It's not the easiest to use the tip to do drag cuts, but the belly works so well. And nothing really stood in this one's way. All the dent stuff, it blasted through it. And it made cutting this denim very easy too, because the denim squishes and sometimes can be a little bit more difficult. But the way the belly is on this one, outstanding. Now let's move on to the deployment. So you have 2 forms of deployment here. You have a regular flipper and you have a front flipper. I always thought that looks kind of strange whenever you see these 2 right here. Now, I'm not a huge front flipper fan. However, I don't mind it all that much as long as I can use it as a slow roller, and I can. I don't lose contact at all. And if I want to, I can also grab it with the knuckle right there and do the knuckle roll. The jimping right there is nice and grippy. If you want to use it as a regular front flipper, you can do that rather easily as well. And then you have jumps up on that flipper tab. You can put your finger in that little scoop if you want and do a rock back motion. Nice light switch action. Or if you wanted to load up, grab the tip of that, you can do a push button, which rockets it out even faster. As you can see, the flipper tab is sitting in front of that pivot, so it's going to have a lot of momentum. Let's see. You can break that detent, and it's about a 45-degree angle before that blade's got to take over, and it's riding on cage ceramic ball bearings, giving it a very nice, glassy, smooth action. It also has a ceramic detent ball that helps aid in that action as well. And I find it's a nice, well-tuned detent, giving you a nice, crisp, nice, hard break once you break that detent. Not a guillotine faller, but I like a nice controlled drop. I'm perfectly A-okay with that. I'd rather have a more positive flip than a guillotine. Now let's take a look at these rather stunning scales. At least I think they're very, very attractive, especially depending on how the light hits these milled lines right here. It kind of goes in different ways. It looks like waves going in and out. There's several different variations. I just got the plain blasted tie and the raindrop carbon fiber inlay. Now, I really, really wish they would at least put this inlay on the opposite side. I'm okay with not having this milled texture here because at least they put it on the pocket clip. But I do think it would have definitely looked a lot better with the inlay on both sides. It just looks so off in my opinion. You have a Torx T8 pivot, and this is Kansept, so we know that these are all T6. Because they're the only overseas company that claims that the T6 are not as good as the T8. I'll never understand that. One thing I will say about Kansept's hardware is I've never had any of their screws strip on me. They have a nice tight fitment on the T6, and I've taken apart quite a few Kansepts since they've been on the scene, and never once have I had one strip on me, and I'm sure they would replace it rather quickly if it did. Got a nice chamfer going all the way around. And that was the next thing I noticed whenever I was doing the testing, is that this handle is very, very comfortable, at least for my medium-sized hands. Even though it's flat scales, the way it flares out right here, my hand fits perfectly. Now, I still have a little bit left to go, so if you have large hands, you should be able to fit in here. I don't know about XL hands, but I would think large and medium-sized hands would fit just fine. We have a 3D milled titanium pocket clip that is blind screwed, meaning that it's screwed from the inside, so you don't have to have any screw holes visible on this side. I love seeing that. And if you hadn't noticed already, they have another feature that I really wish more companies would do, because as you see right here, you have a nice clean lock side. That's why that texture would have looked nice, but they put that lock relief on the inside. This is the second Kansept that I've gotten with the lock relief on the inside, and I absolutely love seeing that. You don't have to worry about your materials, your pants bunching up in the lock relief, depending on where the clip sits. This clip goes in and out of the pocket nicely. It's got some good spring to it. It's almost, I'm not going to say it's too springy, but it's right on that borderline. You can see it's quite thin right here. You have a hardened stainless steel lock insert that also acts as an over travel so you don't overspring your lock bar. We have about 3/4 length back spacer there that's flush with the scales. And we have tons. Look at all the pocketing in there. They did everything they possibly could to reduce the weight, even on the lock side. Oh, there goes my light. So tons of pocketing, bringing the weight down to 4.5 ounces. And I did not find it to be cumbersome in the pocket at all. You have enough ramp for all my jeans. I had no issues with it going in and out of the pocket. And it's not a deep carry. However, it sits deeper than a lot of my deep carry clips, as you can see there. And I think this is a nice, attractive looking clip. And it holds it in there nicely. You do have a flipper tab sticking out, so if you do put a phone in there or something, it's going to rub against that. I don't find that to be an issue because I usually don't have much in my that pocket at least. The lockup on this knife, I'd say, is at 40, maybe 50% or so. And I like their lock geometry. I've seen a few lock faces here recently that were quite steep. And, you know, that can become a problem later down the road when it's starting to wear. I've seen lock slip. That seems like a fairly decent lock geometry. Access to the lock bar is fantastic because of this show scale coming down a little bit further. You got a nice deep chamfer right there. It's very comfortable to get my finger in there. No problem whatsoever. The lockup on this thing is super tight. Yeah, no movement up or down, left to right. Now for some size comparisons, we have the Ontario Rat 1 and 2. It's much more similar to the Rat 1. And as you can see, it's almost identical in length to Spyderco PM2, and it dwarfs the Para 3. And it's pretty much identical in length to the Kansept Bulldozer and the Kansept Entity. And lastly, it's a little bit smaller than the Kansept Predatout, and it's almost identical to the Kansept Tuckamore. All right, now for my nitpicks and complaints. I think my biggest nitpick of all is definitely the sharpening choil. You can see it's already widened. Bring this plunge grind all the way to the back. It's a sloping plunge grind, so that plunge grind comes down to right here. If you bring that plunge grind all the way back and then do one just like this pretty much, except go up a little bit higher, then over, then you have a good bit more room to sharpen a knife. I would have also liked to see this inlay on this side at least, being that you don't have this milling pattern. I do like how they put the relief on the inside, however. And this is a personal preference. I would have loved to have some sort of thumb deployment instead of just two flippers. I'm not the biggest front flipper fan or flipper fan, but like I said, that's personal preference, not hurting the functionality of the knife at all. And what are my final thoughts? This knife comes in at $176. Do I think it's worth it? Absolutely. I absolutely love this knife. The reason I like this knife so much is because I like the aesthetics. I like what they did here. I like how you have this kick up in the scales. So whenever you're facing down, it's pushing this forward portion of the blade down. When you're cutting on a flat cutting surface, it is a breeze with this knife. In-hand cuts were really nice. And then not to mention, you got this nice thin geometry that slices very well. I found that the S35 VN held up fantastic. You know, I've never had any issues with Kansept's heat treats on any of their knives. You know, they all perform nicely and they sharpen up nicely. Like I said, there's plenty of other different variations. They got a few Damascus versions. They got some fat carbon inlay versions. They got that copper foiled carbon fiber. They got a lot of different ones. This one just spoke the most to me. You know, if they would have had the blue fat carbon one like they have without the Damascus, I would have probably went with that one. But other than that, this is the one that spoke to me most. The knife has a nice snappy and beautiful action. So if the sharpening tool is not a deal breaker for you and any of the other stuff I talked about is not a deal breaker for you, then yes, I can definitely recommend the knife. If you are interested in this, make sure to check the links down below. It helps support the channel. If you do use my links, awesome. I can't thank you enough. If not, it's no big deal. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave those down below. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. I appreciate it. It lets me know you're enjoying the content. I would love to hear your thoughts on this and any of the things I talked about. What do you think about this design? Do you enjoy the aesthetics of this one? What are your thoughts on Kansept knives? And if you're not already a subscriber and you enjoy knife and gear content, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button. I would love having you. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep those blades sharp. Remember to smile more. Peace!